resettlement a kind of a place that does that take? Personally, I've been pushing very hard for resettlement to apply more and more to the new arrivals, because at the same time we have every month 2,000 new young Christian highlanders coming into the east of Sudan who have very little opportunity for local integration, who really don't have the same type of affinity towards the environment. And I'm pushing really to have that much more apply. Of course, vulnerable groups amongst the old caseload as well, but particularly looking at that those new arrivals as people who really don't have any other option than resettlement in the environment where they are. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just address some of the other questions. Question about do we overestimate the numbers? At the moment, my office, OCHA, is being accused of underestimating the numbers by some experts on Sudan who write in questioning the fact that we talk about 1.9 million IDPs when we used to talk about 2.7 million IDPs. But what we know is whether the figure should be higher or lower. It is difficult in IDP situations the world over to get a real grasp on numbers. I think we need to separate out the atrocities, what went on. We must not downplay the atrocities. We must not lower the figures for our own convenience. But I think we need to separate out what happened in Darfur and the massive level of displacement from the aid operation and those that continue to rely on assistance. We do this in other countries where we talk about IDPs receiving assistance. So we move away from just talking about all the, we have to have two figures. How many people were displaced as a result of the atrocities in Darfur, and how many people are now in camps, and how many people do we need to continue to assist? There are a lot of ongoing re-verification, re-registration exercises, but they're very difficult. They're taking a long time because a lot of the IDPs refuse to allow a re-verification in camps. So what WFP does is they stop providing food until they allow them to verify. And then after 3 or 4 months of basically going on a hunger strike, they say, fine, you can do a registration. But this is why it's all taking a long time to get these figures. When you say who are the IDP's representatives, I think that's a good question. What we know is that we need to reach out to many more stakeholders all over Darfur. And I think the Darfur political process, which is now being launched, should help in that regard. It's an attempt to reach out to many more stakeholders in Darfur rather than speaking only to the few. We know in some of the camps at the moment, the leadership is a very politicized leadership. A camp like Kalma, it's Abdul Wahid who calls the shots. The SLA does not control much territory anymore, but they do control some camps. And when you go and see the leadership in Kalma, they say, wait a minute, and they pick up the phone to Abdul Wahid and they say, right now, what are your questions? Literally, that's what they do. So we do need to be speaking to many more people and not just the very politicized leadership in some of these camps. And then the last question that you asked on the way we conduct business and do we see any change? I think it is changing slowly, but this is a train that's been going in a particular direction at high speed, and I think it's a bit of a job to turn that train around. I think we are seeing more interest to look at some of the returns issues and recovery and development issues, but it is still highly politicized. Unfortunately, in the humanitarian community and amongst the donors, we still see this as a zero-sum game. It's either camps or it's returns. And I think we need to stop that argument. It's a complete nonsense. The number of returns we're talking about is very small. The last few months we've seen 70,000, 80,000 newly displaced people. We're talking about assisting, a few thousand people who've returned. There's not going to be such a complete and utter change whereby we all stop all assistance to people in camps. That's simply not going to happen. But we need to stop thinking so much in black and white terms about either returns or assistance to people in camps. And I think that's beginning. I think there's some progress in that area. So we're gradually depoliticizing the humanitarian operation and thinking more in terms of having a strong humanitarian agenda.
Then are there additional questions? I think we have just a few more minutes. I'm not sure. Okay, so in the back I see Andrea. And then, yeah.
Yes, I have a quick question and live with Refugees International for Jerry. It was very interesting, your analysis of the demographics, the new wave of returnees, and how much of this analysis has been feeding into the planning or adaptation of planning for the early recovery and reintegration activities, both in terms of the operational agency and in terms of the donors? How much is really guiding the new steps in terms of intervention? Thank you.
And there's a woman right over there. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Megan Sobel from Courage Services, and this is actually a nice follow-on to that question. In terms of demographic changes, in addition to age groups and male-female ratios, have you seen anything different in terms of ethnic groups that are coming back or areas of geographic affiliation in South Sudan?
Wendy?
Thank you. I've been impressed by the number of very tangible and practical suggestions you've made on potential reforms which would make coordination much more effective in Sudan. Could you comment on how to actually, what the EU and the United States as the two major donors could do to help the UN make those reforms? I recall a long time ago when I was involved, Dr. Pronk, who was a representative, the UN representative in Sudan, would have periodic meetings of the local ambassadors from major donors. And that was, Dr. Pronk could comment on it himself, but from sitting in Geneva, it was a very effective coordination mechanism. Is that going on? If it's not, why not? What can this group and this report suggest to the United States government and to the EU, who do comprise the major donors, as to what they could do to help you do your job better?